We want to take you through kind of what's driving the need for challenge-based learning. What is challenge-based learning? Take you through some examples of companies that have done challenge-based. I see some people from Global Knowledge. Great. Heads up, guys. I'm going to use you as a case study in addition to some things we're doing on our own. And then in the end, near the end, I'm actually going to throw things over to Ashley and make her / get her to do a live demo as well. So all the risk is going to be on Ashley, and I'm going to be sticking with my nice, safe and comfortable slides. So when her turn comes up, be patient, because anyone who's ever done live demos know how these things work. But we've done all the sacrifices to the demo gods today, so hopefully everything will go well. And then because we're going to scratch on the surface of many things, I have added a slide at the end of this presentation with links to other websites and articles and things like that that will allow you to go deeper than what we're covering here, just because we have about 50 minutes. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully everyone's having a good Tuesday. Yesterday, I wished everyone a good Tuesday, and someone told me at the end of the day that it was only Monday. So I've made sure that today is actually Wednesday, and things are working out well. So what I want to do is take you guys through kind of some of the reasons why we're seeing a drive towards challenge-based learning. Now, again, if you have any questions, just pop them into the chats. We're going to try and keep some things interactive, so we're going to sprinkle some polls throughout the presentation, making sure everyone's keeping up to date. And again, because this is recorded, you can listen to this again and again and again when you get a link to the recordings, hopefully sometime tomorrow. So let's get off of the picture of Ashley and I. Now, if you have not seen this graphic before, this is done by Josh Burson, kind of the well-known, if you're in the instructional design part of the business, around the needs of the modern learner. Now, interesting enough, this slide that I'm showing you now actually was done by Burson back in 2014, but it's still relevant today, if not even more so. And one of the reasons why we're seeing a drive towards challenge-based is kind of two factors. One of which is increasingly, as we all know, we don't have time to do our jobs. We certainly have even less time to go and focus and do some training. And I'm not going to bore you by reading the slide out here, but in the end, after all this research was done by Josh and his team, it turns out that people on average have like 24 minutes a week to focus on training, which is pretty much nothing in terms of getting things done. But then you compare that to the way a lot of traditional training is done, which is often multi-day courses, or increasingly multi-hour videos. But it's increasingly harder for us to go and find time to go and do these things. And as we get deeper into challenge-based learning, you'll see that one of the benefits of challenge-based learning is it often happens in shorter sessions versus a multi-hour or multi-day type format. But again, everyone's distracted at their job. They're unlocking their phones. 9 times every hour and all the rest. But the goal of the slide is to basically go and say, hey, the learning has to fit into my needs, and increasingly I need things in smaller chunks. The way those chunks are delivered, whether it's small instructor-led sessions, self-paced videos, or as we get into it, challenges and so on. But again, it needs to kind of be on the shorter side of things. So I always like showing this slide because it's amazing to me when I think about my day-to-day job. I have a hard time fitting in learning, and I work for a learning company, right? So I understand the importance of it, but increasingly it gets pushed out to the side, especially when I have to go and do a large time commitment to those things. So when Josh does his presentation using this slide, he often refers to this as the death of the 5-day class, because increasingly no one has time for 5 days, let alone 3 days, let alone a day. They can really try and do things in hour or less chunks of time. So it's pretty interesting, just with all the data that he did. We think about these things, if someone said, does any of this surprise me? No, it doesn't surprise me, but it's nice to see that research coming out from him as well. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Now, you can't laugh at my graphics. I do have a touchscreen computer, so I did challenge myself to try and draw a wave, and that is my wave that I've done there. But the other thing driving this need for things like challenges is, in addition to the modern learner having a lot less time to dedicate to training or learning. At the same point, for those of us in the IT industry, and most of us in this webinar this afternoon are coming from companies that are in the IT sector, is, of course, to no one's surprise, the rapid rate of change happening on the technology side of things. And much of the training that is happening is either using or based on top of this technology that feels like it's changing all the time. So if you look at this slide, let's just say 3, 4, or 5 years ago, the good old days for those of us in the training business, software versions would change every 2 to 3 years, right? So if you think about Microsoft Office, I mean, they gave it, calendar years, Office 2010 and things like that, Windows Server. Same thing, from other companies as well. They did regular updates every couple of years. And because those updates would happen every so often, when those updates came out, literally new versions, right, a lot of training was needed. And often that amount of training that was needed would add up to multiple days of training. So on one hand, you have this trough happening every 2 to 3 years, new version comes out, the sheer size of that wave, the height of the wave, indicated that a lot of training was happening. And when I worked for Microsoft and I worked for other companies, when a new version of the software came out, that was the year I had to go off and take a 5-day course or a multi-day course. But of course, starting a couple of years ago, things started to change even more rapidly, and it got less than every couple of years, and started to now seeing annual updates. In fact, a lot of the online companies started to do regular releases every year, and started to push out more functionality on a more regular basis. And when the new stuff came out, you didn't need a lot of training because those updates were smaller in size. So you only needed a couple of days worth of training. And then you get to today's environment where, I kid you not, a lot of the software tends to be changing all the time. And when I say all the time, again, if you look at Microsoft as an example, they are pushing out updates, every week, every month, right? If you look at companies like Google and Amazon, Salesforce, all this software, especially those being hosted in the cloud, they are pushing out updates as soon as they're available. So they're not waiting and pulling them all together and doing a version update or doing an annual update. They're like, if it's ready to go, push it out, and it's happening all the time. So it's interesting because again, on one side you have the needs of the learner, which is 23 minutes a week, obviously just not much. And then on the other side, you got this constant ongoing change happening, right? And I use software as an example because I think most of us are in that space and can certainly sympathize with. It feels like my Office 365 is getting updated, all the time. But those two things are coming together and putting a lot of pressure on the notion of this course. And the course is that construct that we had for years and years. Again, multiple days, instructor-led, long sessions, 9 to 5 every day, often following the format of lecture lab, right? Watch the instructor go through the PowerPoints, and then you're going to go and practice what he learned by doing some kind of lab. You're going to do that off and on through a couple of days, and maybe at the end of it, there's some kind of assessment or an exam or certification that you need to go and accomplish. But lecture, lab, and assess is very much that traditional model. But wait a minute, the learner only has, say an hour a week, let's be generous, and everything's changing. So what I'm learning on today may be changing in the next 30 days. So it's made the notion of a course, really challenging. And I think this is one of the things now more so than ever driving the need for challenge-based learning. I'm going to take you through what is challenge-based learning. But first, I want to help you understand why this is coming to the forefront now versus, well, why didn't we do challenge-based learning years ago? Well, challenge-based learning is not a brand new concept. It is a new instructional design model that is continuing to gain traction and awareness because with these two driving forces, shorter sessions and the need to have more frequent training sessions, now you're starting to see more and more people shifting over to challenge-based learning, and frankly, challenge-based learning becoming more effective. But certainly, you can go back to, if you have kids like I do, they do project-based learning. They have done, similar challenge-based learning for years and years in more traditional academic institutions and areas, but we're certainly now seeing it coming over more into the IT space as well. So what is challenge-based learning? Well, it's kind of the way it sounds, which is you give people a challenge to go and solve, and by solving the challenge, they're learning. And by solving the challenge, you're actually able to go and assess what they're doing and how well they're doing it. But it's the reverse of that traditional, like I said earlier, lecture, lab, and assess model, because you're not going to go and say, here's all the knowledge, now apply what you learned, let me go test what you learned. It's more of, here's a problem to solve, and more explicitly, here's a challenge, a provocative thing that you need to go and solve, and you're going to learn it by doing it. It also involves limited guidance, right? So again, in traditional learning, we tend to give people lots of safety nets and give them probably, I would argue, more information than they need. Here, it's help as you need it, not giving you all the lectures up front. So again, that notion of limited support or guidance. And the other big change with challenge-based learning is moving away from having all this content to more giving people frameworks. How would you approach this? How would you think about this? What would you do in this situation versus PowerPointing them to death, right? Now, the irony is in this webinar, I'm doing lots of PowerPoint slides, but this isn't a challenge-based thing. This is more around moving away from too much content to giving people the minimal amount of content, the framework, the basic framework in order to get things done. It also involves, again, to make it more relevant, giving people real world scenarios in which their challenges are happening, right? And the other interesting thing is challenge-based learning can be done by individuals, or it can be group-based, right? So in a group-based thing, here's the challenge, right? Here's the thing you need to solve. Let's now go break off into small teams. Everyone go focus and work together within your team to solve that challenge, and let's report out at the end of it. And we're going to have a report from all the different teams, and then we're going to go and talk about, what was the best approach, having heard from all the different teams. That's a team-based or a group-based challenge. But likewise, you can also go and do kind of self-paced challenges where you can go and say on your own, here's a challenge, here's an environment and supporting documentation and some frameworks to help you work through the challenge. You certainly are not left to go through things just on your own, which is, here's a question, give me the answer. There is some structure behind it. It can also work for individuals as well. Now, one of my favorite websites, if you guys have not gone to it, is a website called Digital Promise. And Digital Promise is actually a federally mandated or created by the US federal government to go and look into new ways of learning. And one of those focus areas is around what they call CBL, because everything has to be an acronym, but more correctly, challenge-based learning. And they have a very standard, almost like a framework in the way that they define challenge-based learning. It's not IT specific. It's more of a framework that can be adapted to, higher education, to educational environments, and also on the IT side of things. But it's a good summary. And the other thing I like around Digital Promise is this organization, this federal organization, is also supported by, Google and Apple and the Gates Foundation and things like that. So they tend to do a lot of research behind this. But if you look at this circle, the way they approach challenge-based learning is through engaging, investigating, and then acting. Now, I'll take you through some examples, again, global knowledge and some stuff that we've done here at Learn On Demand Systems. Not quite as verbose as this, but again, the notion is you start with, a concept, a big idea, then you're going to go and drive that into a question, and that question ends up getting reworded into being a challenge, right? Then you're going to have people go through and investigate it. Maybe there's some guiding questions. Think about this while you approach this, or don't forget about this. Again, that supporting minimal amount of structure, and then at the end of it, right, people are going to go and come up with a solution. And depending on how you're doing challenge-based learning, it could be that in a group base, people again report out on those solutions, and people think about those solutions. They discuss the pros and cons of each of the different solutions. That is their answer to the challenge that was given. And then they think about those things and reflect upon it. So I like this diagram because it helps to cover all aspects that you need to think about when you do challenge-based learning. You certainly don't have to go and do all these at the same time, right? You don't have to cover all the numbered bullet points and things like that. But if you want to do a very comprehensive challenge-based learning solution, Digital Promise is a great website, and I have links to them at the end as well. All right, so let's keep going. Some of the highlights when you look at this model is everyone's a learner, everyone's equal. This again applies more to group-based learning, but it is where the learner is inspired by the challenge that they're given. They are directing how they want to approach it, and then they own that solution. Okay, so we often use the phrase learner-driven and things like that. This gets into a little bit, here's your challenge. Now you own that solution. You go figure out how you want to approach it. I'm not going to hold your hands, right? I'm going to give you kind of a fenced off area so you don't go and wander off. So I'll give you some guidelines and some structure, but how you approach it is going to be up to you or the team that you are working on with. Challenges are designed to provoke as well. So it's not just question. This isn't, question-based learning, right? This is a challenge-based learning. It is something that is designed to be bigger than a simple question. And I'll give you some examples, or more correctly, Ashley, we'll take you through some examples. But there's also boundaries, right? So it's again, not just a question and give me the answer. It tends to be a little bit more complex than that, requires some thinking, requires some research, requires things to be done, but they often tend to be, gated so that there's some structure around it. But the other side of it is the ability to learn by failing. And this is, kind of interesting because often, and I'll use, IT training as an example, a lot of times when I see companies do IT training, it is often step by step, which is, okay, in order to do this, here's the things you need to do. Now, go do a lab. And if you follow all these steps in the lab, your lab's going to be successful. Well, that step by step is the exact opposite of what happens in challenge-based learning. Because in challenge-based learning, you're not giving those people those step-by-step instructions. You're giving them, here's what you need to do. And then you're jumping to the end saying, now let's talk about your solution. How they get to that solution, how they define it, and how they structure it is all up to the student. As they're going through this, well done challenges where let students go and fail and try things out. Okay, I'm going to try and to solve this problem, I'm going to try and do it this way. Oh, wait a minute, it didn't work out. All right, I need to go back and try again. Okay, this one seems to be better, right? But giving people the notion of failing, and then I always kind of think of it as more, falling forward, so that when I do fall down, I'm falling down in a forward direction. I'm still learning, and I'm learning by doing, but I'm also learning by failing, which is kind of a weird phrase when you think about trying to help people gain new skills. And then the other bullet points are just more expansions of what I've already talked about, which is by giving people a challenge to solve and giving them the flexibility in how they want to approach it, but they also have to document it. They also have to think about what they're doing. They have to get things done. Then it allows them to think about, well, what is the best approach? How am I going to do this? This isn't a simple question. This is a challenge, and the challenge will require me to do several different things in order to solve that problem or that challenge I was giving. And then the last bullet point is probably the one I see less done, and that's the notion of reflecting, which is, you have a challenge, you solved it on your own, you solved it as part of the team, and then you move on to the next one. No, one of the key things is thinking about, was this the right way? Was there better ways of doing it? Reflection often happens best in team-based challenges, because when you hear other people's solutions to the same challenge that you were trying to solve as part of your team, and you're hearing these reports out from other team members, now you can start saying, okay, you know what, that is interesting. That team did it in a different way than I did, or they did it slightly different, and I should really incorporate that aspect into my solution. So that reflection, that ability to internalize things, certainly helps to make for more effective challenge-based learning. Now this and this kind of comes from that website I mentioned earlier. This is just more definitions behind it. Challenges provoke, right? Situations or activities with a sense of urgency and spur action. It's kind of interesting. You actually go to this website, they give you examples of some challenges that are not IT related, and it's notions around conservation is the big concept. Well, the challenge is, how do we conserve water? And then the specific challenge is, what would you do in your own household to go and conserve water, because water is increasingly becoming, or the lack of water is becoming, an issue. Trying to create situations where it's like, yeah, this stuff is important. These are things that we need to do in order to accomplish something. So I'm not going to spend time going through the slide again. You'll get a copy of the presentation, but there is some, expansion of those bullet points that I took you guys through. But the concept of challenges is relatively easy. Here's a challenge. It's a complex problem that you need to go and solve, either by yourself or as a member of a team. You're going to go through it. The definition of challenge-based learning is easy. Doing it becomes harder, right? Because it is hard to go and create a meaningful challenge. It's easy to go and dash off a series of questions and things like that, but a challenge is not a question. A challenge tends to be a more complex problem that requires a more complex solution made up of multiple parts, and then making sure that you have a way that people can go and solve the challenge. It's not a, how difficult can I make a challenge and can I stump people? But you also don't want to make it too easy. This is, the challenge, pun intended, behind creating challenge-based learning. I mentioned a couple people from Global Knowledge is on the call. They've done some pretty interesting things around challenge-based learning. If you go to their website, I put a link to it at the back. They've actually done some good articles around the science behind challenge-based learning and pulling in some outside research and all the rest. So for people looking for, is this, valid? Is it proven? Is it accepted? They've done a really good job writing articles on it. But what they did, and Global Knowledge is an IT training company, one of the largest ones in the world, training, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of students around the world. But they started to incorporate challenge-based learning, and they created a new type of an instructor-led class called master classes. And they started off doing it for Microsoft Azure, which is one of these online technologies changing all the time, right? You don't know what you're going to get, when you log into Microsoft Azure every day. They could have released a new feature overnight. They took this traditional boot camp model, which is, let's pack everyone in 12-hour days. We're going to cover everything around, in this case, Microsoft Azure. And they started in the evening to start doing challenge-based learning with, these scenarios and group exercises and competency-based challenges. And you can see too that they also have a similar, ever-flowing circle, right? This notion in their model, one of the research, some of the research that they've done or that they've quoted is around this notion of giving people that hands-on experience to do something. You're not just listening, you're going to do it. You're going to start, reflecting on what you've done. And this is again happening in the evening during their classes, and their classes in a master class are extended hours, so it's lasting more than just the day. It goes in the evening. But you're going to do some hands-on things. You're going to solve some challenges. You're going to reflect on what those things mean and kind of summarize, what you're learning from it. And then you're encouraged to go and experiment, right? And then this circle continues to go and go every day. And let's say it's a 5-day master class. The things you're doing in the evening are building upon the things that you learned during that day. And then in day 2, the things you're doing in the evening continue to build upon the things that you learned during day 2 and also all the things you learned in day 1. So it's kind of a building block type scenario. But again, very interesting the way that they've approached this, because they've taken what has been a traditional instructor-led model, which is, lecture, lab, but then at the end of every day, using challenges as a way to pull things together. So they didn't go and in this case, Microsoft is supplying the courseware and the labs. They didn't necessarily go and redo everything that Microsoft created. They went and added on challenges to their instructor-led courses as a way to pull things together and summarize things and making things through challenges into those building blocks. So I thought that was a pretty interesting approach that they've taken. And then we also have ourselves, Learn On Demand Systems. I don't think we gave you the pitch at the beginning. I mean, hopefully everyone knows who we are. World's largest or longest email address and web domain, learnondemandsystems.com. But we also started to get into this because we saw through the customers we're working with, and they range from, Microsoft Corporation all the way down to, small training companies or companies that are doing software demos. We saw this trend towards, I need people to get in, do something, learn by doing, and get back out and back into their jobs. And we increasingly were hearing from our customers, hey, any best practices around this? What are you guys seeing this pressure between, I got to train my employees and they don't have a lot of time, and the less time they have, the more I need to get away from doing lectures and let them just jump in and learn by doing. This is where we started to create things as well. So I'm going to pause here for a moment, and I'm actually going to go and let Ashley take us through the slide kind of as a precursor to her doing a live demo, because I think once you start seeing challenges and how they're constructed, I think it's going to bring things better together for you. So Ashley, you're there?
I am. Thank you, Ben. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay, great. So thanks again for the segue here, and certainly I'll take us through a little bit more of again, the case study and with Learn on Demand systems and our challenge-based learning. In particular, we have called our challenge-based learning IT Pro Challenges. And again, the goal behind the IT Pro Challenges, as Ben had already mentioned, is that it's really built upon the notion to allow users to learn by doing. That learn by doing allows them to extend and either expand what they have learned upon in class, and or it could also be expanding upon the skill sets they already have, but again, it needs to be expanded, or they need to deepen it. Our IT Pro Challenges are designed for an individual, just to contrast it, if you will, as compared to the group exercises, again, that Global Knowledge has implemented. These, again, as they are self-paced activities, again, are designed for the individuals. Now, because they are self-paced, they can be completed by a student or by a user as a standalone, or in the instance, again, for some of our learning partners or training partners, these challenges, or again, the self-paced activities can actually be added to or related to an instructor-led course. And there's many different venues, if you will, of adding it to the instructor-led course. It could be something that, again, is added to the beginning of the course if you need to gauge a student's skill set or, again, their particular level. It is something that could be added during a course if needed. Again, if you talk about expanding upon the student's knowledge, and also to give them more of a scenario to work from, in contrast to the labs that they may have, again, completed or performed in class. During the demo, I will go through and certainly show you the IT Pro Challenges, but I do want to go ahead and just call your attention to the contrast of how challenge-based learning, or in particular for IT Pro Challenges, do have a very distinct difference in look and feel to, again, a traditional lab. And so again, if you think about adding that during an instructor-led course, it does, again, extend or, again, expand that customer or user's experience in the course. And then also, again, you could tack on a challenge at the end of a course, again, just to gauge success. Did folks actually learn something in the class? And they'll be able, again, to gauge that learning experience through, like I say, just a check your work process. And so again, I will, like I say, roll you through that. As we go through the demo itself, you will see that we have actually designed our challenges for 3 levels of difficulty. We did this with the thought in mind that, again, we may have users certainly coming in with different experience levels, so we may not always need to start someone at a baseline or a foundational level. The flip side of that is, though, we also wanted to provide students or users, again, like I say, with a model or with almost a learning path that they could complete or follow if there was a particular, again, topic, skill, concept that they wanted to master as well. One of the keys to our challenges, and again, this would apply to all 3 levels, is these are short durations. For a max, again, at our most difficult level, which we will call our expert challenge, it will go to up to 60 minutes. And so this also kind of goes back to the point that Ben was making, that if you need to, again, continue to either engage your customer, and you may only have, again, I think Ben's slide said maybe 24 minutes a week is what they're dedicating to training, or again, even if we were just going to round that up to just say an hour a week to dedicate to training, challenges really fit into that model as well. The other, I would just say, lesson learned, if you will, and again, as we built out our practices for IT Pro Challenges, we found out that consistency was key, and consistency in the framework. And again, I think Ben mentioned this previously. We want to get students in the mindset of what they're expected to see, the tone that they are expecting, like I say, the language, again, or the requirements to be performed. And also, again, in my mind, personally, that they have the verification and or assessment portion built into a challenge. So again, they can gauge their success along the way. And so Ben, I'll ask you to pop forward to the next slide, if you don't mind, before we go to the demo. And we'll just take a look at, again, here are the 3 difficulty levels, or again, the challenge levels that I had alluded to. And so our levels break down to guided, advanced, and expert. They do vary in duration. The guided is our more foundational level, again, where we expect folks to be familiar with a topic, but may not have, again, deep hands-on experience. So again, these are more the foundational based elements that they'll be asked to perform. And generally, it should take them about 30 minutes to complete the task or the requirements listed in the challenges. In the advanced challenge, this is actually, again, the second tier, kind of the middle tier in level of difficulty. Our user for this is someone, again, that does have experience using the particular technology, but perhaps they haven't mastered all of the administrative tasks that may be, again, related to a particular item. In our advanced challenges, we will provide hints similar to hints that we will provide in guided, but it's a little more top line that we ask the students actually to go and research themselves. We really are encouraging them and putting the framework in place for them to actually go and assimilate and put the pieces together to then go and, again, learn how to perform the task at hand. And again, this really goes to the fail fast, fail often, and fail forward model, that they are constantly in the challenges, practicing, getting their results, and again, gauging their success and continuing their practice. And then the last model, or again, excuse me, the last challenge level that we have is the expert level. And this is very much as the name implies. This is intended for someone that does have expert experience around a topic, and it's certainly a broad topic. It can span across multiple platforms, multiple technologies, and again, using multiple products. But what the difference we'll see, and again, we'll demo this here in just a moment, is that we are really putting the provocation, if you will. Ben talked about, again, challenges needing to provoke. We are really putting in our expert challenges kind of the gauntlet out, so to speak, that we are asking the students to go through and perform requirements for that all-up task without guidance along the way. So I'll go ahead, Ben, if you don't mind to make me a presenter, I will go ahead and, like I say, begin the demo. But as we're making that transition, I will open it up to any questions right now. And again, if you want to pop those in the chat window.
And then Ashley, while we're doing that,
Yeah.
let me just run a poll because
Oh,
I've
sure.
switched on polls to keep everyone awake this often. So I've got some powered up that I want to get out here. So I'm going to launch this one around, are you already using challenge-based learning, just to see where you guys are at. And then the other one is to make sure I'm not here to sell you guys anything. What we heard from our own customers was, man, I get the theory, I understand what challenge-based learning is and the definition, but give me some examples. Help me understand how others are approaching it, so I can use these as templates or something that helps me wrap my mind around how my own company could be doing challenges. So when Ashley takes you through, what her team is doing, she has a team of authors that are building literally hundreds of these challenges. Her model is probably one of those more complex ones because they have different levels, and you can enter in and do an advanced one or an expert one if you think. Showing you this hopefully will help you get you guys thinking about how yourself you can approach it. After her demo, she'll take you through some best practices around creating challenges. These are or lessons that she has painfully learned with the prototypes were done with her and her team and her customers during the alphas and the betas. And then I'll round out things at the end and show you that last slide with some links where you can do some deeper dives. What I would say, one of the things I like around what Ashley's done for this webinar is she's going to show you one of each of these types, one guided, one advanced, one expert, and she's going to give you the link to them afterwards so you can go and launch these on your own. You don't have to do anything complicated, and you can go and try these on your own. Again, not so much that you want to go and take challenges on Azure, I think is the topic, but more that you can go and see the different approaches that I've taken that may help you think about ways to do it yourself. So let me go through and I'm going to close this thing out. And in the end, let me share it, right? And so a lot of you not doing it yet. Some are, 1/3 yes, 2/3 no. Great, because honestly, I think as we continue to move into this world of constant change, constant distractions, things like challenges are going to become more and more useful and frankly more and more effective, but they have to be done on a regular basis. This is down the path of continuous learning, and it also has to be done in small chunks. And you kind of need both. This is not like, oh, here's a 60-minute challenge there, thanks a lot, see you, next year. The notion is shorter sessions of learning happening over a longer period of time versus the traditional model, again, say of a 5-day course. So I expect to see more and more of this stuff popping up. And for those of you that are thinking about these things, we're seeing very good feedback ourselves from our customers taking these and from others in the industry going down this path as well, that challenges are resonating very strongly with learners. They like to be presented with a challenge versus PowerPoints and lectures and things like that. I constantly hear, just let me do it. Just let me try it myself. So let me go and hide this. And Ashley, I will turn things over to you. And best of luck with your live demo.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate that. So yes, I'm just going to pop that up here. And we will go ahead and get started. And so what I have on the screen right now, and again, Ben already mentioned this for me, is that you will actually see the 3 different types of challenges, or the 3 different levels that I had mentioned. So there's the guided, the advanced, and the expert. And I like to show, again, kind of this view, if you will, because we talked about the consistency in framework. And again, that it is important to, and again, from our lessons learned, it is important that the structure be consistent, and that, again, it allows the student to get in the mindset of what they will be performing, and also, again, just where they may find items on top of what they're going to be asked to do. And again, important because we talk about the iterative process, and again, always wanting to engage students and always having them train. So again, with the mindset that they would come in and repeat, or I shouldn't even say repeat, but they would come in and actually take several different challenges throughout their training year, or again, throughout again their training path as well. And so again, what you'll see here, again, just to kind of bump us through, and again, the challenge itself, what you will see again is that we do provide a scenario for each challenge type. As the challenges increase in difficulty, the scenarios will also get a little more complex, as will the environment in which, again, the lab will be performed. And again, we really try to just allow this to set the scene for the student before they actually take their action, that we really want them to get in the mindset, again, of they are in a specific job role at a specific company, being asked to perform very specific tasks or very specific requirements. And the reason we like to set that tone, as you'll see, when I actually launch into a challenge, we are jumping right to the task, the step, or the requirement that they are being asked to perform. And again, I will contrast this again amongst the three different levels of the challenges. But in particular, as you're looking at these challenges, I'll ask you to think back to my comment of where we wanted the challenges to have a very distinct and different look and feel from a lab. And so again, here you will see the task, or again, the steps. And again, I'll just refer to the guided challenge, which is here on the left-hand side of your screen. Create a storage account that has a blob container. It is very straightforward in what we're asking the student, and not even asking, but what we're telling the student they need to do. And then as you look at the underlying task beneath that, instead of the click by click, or again, very prescriptive steps that students may use to be seeing in a lab itself, you will see that the tasks are very goal-oriented, written very high level, like I say, with very few details, just as far as, again, as what the individual clicks may need to be around the challenges themselves. You will see that again, kind of that goal-oriented task carried throughout the different level of challenges. Again, as the challenges increase in complexity, the steps will also, or again, excuse me, the tasks will also increase in complexity. Another item mentioned, and again, probably my favorite part about our challenge model, but just in challenges in general, is that we're allowing students to gauge their success along the way. And they can do this in several different methods, and we're actually employing several different assessments throughout the different challenge types as well. And so you will see in the guided and advanced challenge, we have a check your work section under each. For the guided challenge, this is something we have framed up for the student that they can self-verify on their own. And so again, are they seeing a particular resource deployed in Azure correctly? If they were to get stuck, if you will, we will always provide hints. And in particular to the guided challenges, this is where it gets a little more detailed. When I actually scroll through or actually launch a hint, you can see, again, this is actually not providing the step-by-step detail of what has to happen when a challenge, like I say, is being asked to be performed, but it does show them the end result. And so again, this is to allow them, like I say, to proceed. We certainly, like I say, while we want a challenging, obviously to be challenging, no pun intended, we always want to provide a lifeline to the students, like I say, if they were to need help. Now, when I contrast that to the advanced challenge, in our check your work section here, we are actually running activity-based assessments. And this is where we're actually checking that the student has performed, again, these tasks that are listed up top are being performed correctly. So I am going to allow this to run behind the scenes here just for a second so you can see the result. But while that's happening, I would also like to, again, pull up the hint for an advanced challenge, just so again, and actually I'll go back to the hint in the guided challenge as well, just so you can see a little bit of the difference. The guided challenge here, again, is providing students really the indication of what the end result or the solution should look like, as opposed to, again, the hints in the particular advanced challenge. This is telling the students or showing the user where the solution may be found. And so again, that really goes back to assimilating what they've learned. It also allows them, again, to figure out, if you will, which tasks they already know how to perform, and again, which ones they may need some work on. And again, they'll have those resources available to them. And then you can actually see that my check my work, in this instance, I have actually, like say again, completed the task correctly. But for the advanced challenge, another item that we have implemented is that before students may proceed to the next step of the challenge, again, we are asking them to verify their work or check along the way. And so again, allowing them to come back and continually repeat items. If they were to fail initially, they have the option to come back and continue to check their work to ensure, again, that they are learning along the way. And then finally, I will contrast again just to the expert challenge. You will note that there are no hints along the way. We talked about, again, the expert, again, as the name implies, is for someone, again, that should be able to perform a particular topic or subject at the mastery level. We are giving them the validation at the end, but as they validate at the end, again, this will be where they actually submit for a score report. And just full disclosure, I've actually not completed anything in this challenge. They will, again, get a success and or a failure message as well. And so, again, that just shows you, again, how we have, again, implemented, again, just the challenge of putting the provoking questions out there. We, again, have provided them with, again, either assessments or self-verification along the way, so they may continue to gauge their success and, again, see the areas that they need improvement upon. And so with that in mind, I am going to stop actually the demonstration portion of this and ask Ben to take us back to, excuse me, the presentation itself and take you a little bit through our methodology and also the lessons learned behind these challenges. Again, not so much, again, like I say, just to see exactly what Learn on Demand Systems has, but again, more so from the best practices. Again, if you were thinking to implement or again, include this in, again, either your training offerings or again, if you were to provide it as a standalone. And so as I have worked with my SMEs to develop these topics, I really approached the SMEs to design what we're calling it, as you'll see here in this example, a series. And so the challenge series itself is comprised of 10 challenges, comprised, obviously, you'll see of both the guided, advanced, and expert level. And so when our SMEs are developing these challenges, when they are thinking of development, it's almost that they are thinking of that expert scenario of what has to be solved initially, designing that, and then we'll tier out the advanced challenges or the guided challenges. The reason I particularly like this hierarchy model, it allows for a couple of different items. Number one, the challenges themselves still may be taken independently. And what I mean by that, if a student were to, again, want to attempt a particular challenge at any particular level, they may absolutely do so. And as we saw with the assessments or, again, the verification process, if they were to fail or need more practice, the tiered model, you can see, supports the challenge level above it. So if someone were to have again, just a complex issue, or again, they just did not have the skill set to solve, again, a particular item in a learning network or in learning networks in this particular example and needed some additional support, they have access to the guided VNets that they could go through and complete as well. And so again, while students may also come in and complete at any level, this hierarchy model also provides them with a learning path as well. So again, if they do want to start or need to start at that basic introductory level and work to the expert level, they certainly can do so as well. And so that really does go into the best practices of the challenges. So again, when we talk about, I've worked with SMEs and asking them to design the series at a top level, it really is kind of that work backwards model. Again, they start top level and think about how they can tier it down. So if students do need or users do need support, they have that supporting example or again, supporting challenges underneath. Lesson learned for me from my SMEs in particular is resisting the temptation to add the training wheels. What we want to keep in mind, again, the challenges, they want to be shorter duration. We want students, again, to be able to complete in a shorter amount of time. So hence, the less guidance, the less, in our case, less information they may have on a particular screen. However, you can provide the guidance in hints if need be. There is, again, a lesson to be learned with the hint when looking at, again, that final bullet point just in the slide here is that reducing content maintenance. So in this example, obviously, we were demonstrating Azure, and Azure is changing all of the time. And so in order for us to either A, keep our challenges up to date or accurate, we are also limiting the amount of content that you'll see in the challenges themselves and also in the hints. So again, you will see very limited screenshots, or again, like I say, just examples or references that will be, like I say, in the challenges themselves. And so I can see we're out of time by Ben, like I say, prompting through the
Did you say
presentation.
subtle hints there, Ashley?
It was subtle indeed. So I'm turning it over to you, and thank you.
All right, well, let's wrap things up in a couple of different ways. One of which is you'll get a copy of the recording. If there's anything we can stress when you're thinking about challenges, think A, with a plan that you're going to be creating, lots of them. The second one is going to be thinking about different levels of challenges, and always think about your students want to get in and start learning. This actually works to your advantage because you don't have to create a lot of content. You have to spend more time thinking about the challenge definition itself, but your students want to start and learn by doing. They don't like those hand holding. And then the other one is, this does not mean that the amount of training is fewer hours, right? A 5-day course, let's say it's 30 hours. You still may end up doing 30 hours worth of challenges, but they're going to be in that smaller, less than an hour chunk spread over a longer period of time. And that spacing actually helps retention as well, right? So you're not drinking from the fire hose. But don't take my word for it. There's a link here to the challenge-based website. There's a link to a challenge-based classroom guide for those that are looking for challenges in the classroom created by Apple. There's a link to the 3 challenges that Ashley showed you, so you can go through and look at these as an example of a learning path, a hierarchy, different levels of complexity within a challenge, different levels of assessment, and different levels of hints. You can look at those 3 challenges she showed you. And then if you're interested in some more of the science behind things and looking at research done by others, in addition to those websites and those guides, there's a good article written by an instructional designer called Evan at Global Knowledge behind their thinking when they devised or built their master class as well. Thank you guys very much for all your time. I hope you enjoyed it. We were pretty excited to share our lessons learned with you.